It was Carl Jung who said, until you make the subconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. I feel this is really an important topic to discuss. It is about self-awareness around our subconscious, and I will be sharing with you an excerpt from our online course, Managing Your State of Wellbeing, where I explain a little bit around how the subconscious can influence our behavior. Bruce Lipton and a few scientists got together and they researched that 90 to 95% of our behavior is subconscious. I mean, this is crazy to say that the majority of what I'm doing I'm not aware of. And I feel this is a critical part of personal development and personal growth, and that is to begin learning and understanding what is happening in this body, what is happening in this mind, and that there is 4 billion years of evolutionary wisdom tucked up within this body and mind. And without awareness, what it could be doing, it could be making choices for us that are not necessarily conducive to what we want out of life. And it's not to say that our subconscious and our body is operating against us. It's not. It's just working with what it knows. And we've got this incredible gift now. We've got this higher brain, this neocortex, which you'll see I'll talk a little bit about shortly. And with this awareness, we can go into this place and almost observe within ourselves and see what is happening. It's interesting to note that our subconscious processes information. It's around 400 billion bits per second, which travels at about 160,000 kilometers per hour or something like that. Whereas our higher awareness, our higher brain, only processes about 2,000 bits per second, which travel at about 160 to 190 kilometers per hour. So it's way more slower. So I guess what I'm really saying is there's so much within our subconscious that is happening. Is it possible to be aware of everything that's happening down there? I do not know the answer. I personally feel for me, there's always going to be way more happening than I can be consciously aware of. But it is important for me as I wish to start directing my life. It is important for me to pay attention. And even if I make some gains or become a little bit more aware than I was before, that's at least better than not having any attention or paying any awareness at all. So I'm going to share a little bit with you now. You'll see in this short excerpt from the online course. Have a look. And yes, I'll return afterwards and we'll chat about some ideas around this. So let's look at the brain. The brain has three main regions: the neocortex region, the limbic region, and the reptilian region. The reptilian region is the oldest part of the brain. We share it with crocodiles and lizards. It houses our automatic processes. We'll look at that just now. The limbic region, that's all about our emotions. And the neocortex region, the most latest part of the brain, that is new bark. Neocortex stands for new bark. It sits over the subcortical, the subconscious part of the brain, the limbic region and the reptilian region. So this is really the subconscious part. This is the area that really impacts on 90 to 95% on our behavior. So let's have a look and see just how it does that. So from a reptilian brain's perspective, it doesn't think. It operates purely on impulse. It's ancient. Its job is to keep us alive with automatic processes such as hunger, thirst, our digestive system. We don't have to think about these things, they just happen. Our breathing. Imagine if we had to consciously remember to breathe, we wouldn't make it through the night. It also houses our deep memory of base fears. It's the saber-toothed tiger, and I talk about it symbolically. When we were hunters and gatherers, we were part of the food chain. If we came across the saber-toothed tiger, we either would fight or flight. And I suppose that saber-toothed tiger has still come with us symbolically in our minds, because when we, for example, have a meeting with somebody we don't like, a part of our subconscious brain will kick in and see that person as that symbolic saber-toothed tiger, and we will actually behave in a way that is very similar to getting away from a saber-toothed tiger. So we'll fight, and I'm not saying literally fight the person. We will fight through our words. Our communication will get defensive or abrasive. We'll put on the masks, or we'll flight. We'll put on the mask of going quiet, of being subdued, of not saying anything. So that is part of our reptilian brain. Now, our limbic system, this is part of the emotional brain. It's very much around our emotions. It produces our emotions. Behind every emotion is biochemistry. Oxytocin, for example, is called the hug drug. When you hug somebody, it releases oxytocin, so you feel good. If you eat chocolate, it releases dopamine. It's a reward, the reward neurotransmitter, so we really feel good, and it kind of imprints within us the pleasure from that, because that's really what happens with emotions. We have pleasure, and we have pain. And mostly we want to avoid the pain and go for the pleasure. So let's just see how the subconscious can drive our behavior. When we were young, we might have had some chocolate cake, and this chocolate cake was sweet and it had lots of carbs in it. And in our deep brain, subconscious part of the brain, it signals this pleasure, this dopamine. And what it's also saying is, this sweetness is good. It's got lots of sugar, it's got lots of carbs, and that is part of my survival, is to accumulate as much resources as I can in case there's a famine in the future. That's why we put on weight so easily. It's harder to lose weight because our bodies are designed to save the weight for when times are hard. And as we grow up now, we go through heartbreak, and it's funny how emotions, we really do feel pain when we go through heartbreak, and the signals kick in from the subconscious. Now, they don't talk to us with words. It's through an urge. It's a feeling. So we get this urge that comes up that kind of says, do you remember you had that chocolate cake? It made you really feel good. Now you're feeling pain, so have some more chocolate cake to kill the pain. So we eat chocolate cake and it numbs the pain, and that's where we get comfort eating. And what happens is, without self-awareness, we could just keep on eating cake to keep away the pain. But what happens is we end up putting on weight because of this excess sugar. And we end up just making ourselves even feel less worthy than the original part, than we originally did in the heartbreak. And before we know it, we end up running towards whatever we're running away from, more pain. So the subconscious itself is really, it comes through in subliminal messages, through our feelings. And this is why it's so important to have awareness around it. Our neocortex, this is the wizard. This houses the left prefrontal cortex and the right prefrontal cortex just behind the forehead. The left prefrontal cortex, this part of the brain, is where we use our rational brain. When we are reflecting, why do I feel this urge to want to eat the chocolate cake? We are using this part of our brain. The right prefrontal, by the way, when we get very emotional, we can go more into our right prefrontal because there's a lot more neuro pathways into our limbic system. So for now, it's important to understand that self-awareness is about trying to activate and work with our left prefrontal cortex and not get sucked totally into the emotional side of things. And we'll explore this a little bit further in the next topic. So I just absolutely love the neuroscience. What I've given you is a real high-level general summary of it. I mean, the brain itself is probably the most undiscovered part of our bodies. It's the entire universe in its own process, and the neuroscientists are coming up with the most incredible stuff every day. But nevertheless, it is about paying attention to the urges. And yes, to try and become aware of everything at once, I feel it's virtually impossible. But at least making that gesture to pay attention to those urges. For example, you're in the traffic. Why do I have this urge to want to scream and shout at somebody who's maybe not driving the way I'd like them to drive? Or why am I getting angry? The urge to get angry because there's traffic in front of me and I can't really control that. And to pay attention to that urge and possibly not act on it. That's probably one of the greatest things for me as a starting point, is to become less reactive to our urges. And that's where the change happens. But change also doesn't happen overnight. The subconscious, as I said, it's been there for a lot longer than our awareness maybe has been, and therefore it's going to take time to make these changes. And I feel that's the other side effect of personal growth. We try things and it doesn't work, and then we give up and we say, what's the point? Well, for me, it's a game that can never be won. It's a game that can only be played, and I continue to play this game. So I leave you with this quiet reflection. Who or what would I be if I pay attention to at least one urge or one subconscious behavior that I have, and I work with that? Who could I be if I make that small change? Because as I make that small change now, whilst the variance doesn't seem great right now, over time that variance, that deviation that we take, that new path we take grows, and we could find ourselves in such a different place than we would otherwise have been. So those are just some thoughts, folks. And until we chat again, take care and stay aware.